We will call this school board meeting together for Waseca Public Schools. Tonight is Thursday, November 18th. It is 5:30 p.m. And we are in the central building, second floor conference room. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move we approve the agenda tonight.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. At this time, we recognize any visitors that wish to speak during our open forum. Does anyone here wish to speak? Do we have any emails at all today?
We did not.
All right. Anyone listening at home, feel free to send us an email to wasecadistrict@gmail.com, and we can read your email at our next regular meeting. Also, those of you listening at home, I was posted on Facebook, but these microphones are just for show. They're not working yet, so we're still working on that. And so please bear with us as we continue to upgrade our audio system.
Very close.
Very close. Yes. All right, moving on into payment of claims. It was my month to review the claims, and I make a motion that we take action on payment of claims for accounts payable in the amount of $1,555,177.85. And this does not include the October dental. And then also payroll for $840,818.76. Can I get a second?
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And we'll move on then to our information items, beginning with the report from our superintendent.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you this evening. I have just two things to share. We'll take a month off from talking about strategic plan most directly and talk really about two things. And the first thing I'd like to just do is take a snapshot opportunity to talk about health and safety update, what's happening with COVID in the district. As I'm sure you're hearing around the region and around the state, Minnesota is getting some news for our cases right now. And so I think it's really relevant for us to continue to look at what's happening here in Waseca, what's happening in our school buildings. And so in front of you have some notes you can refer to, and I'll walk through these things just to give us a sense of what's happening here in our district. So in place right now, we are continuing to recommend masking for non-vaccinated individuals in our schools. That has been in place for the entire school year. That has not been something we've adjusted. We've increased ventilation through some of our health and safety plans and cleaning procedures. Used some of our ESSER money, the federal dollars that came in, to add some teachers to try to minimize the class size increase as much as we possibly could for this year. There wasn't a significant class size increase anywhere, so that's fantastic. We are notifying families of potential exposures and close contacts. And so I do know that there's sometimes some questions about whether or not we're doing that. We are. So if something was happening where your child was exposed, you are getting notified of that. We do offer testing to students and staff. They can do the saliva test, take it home, bring it back. We'll send it in. We are requiring quarantine for household contacts unless they're vaccinated, and they have the option to quarantine or not. Non-household contacts are recommended quarantine, but not a requirement with that case. We're finding that even now, 20 months into this pandemic, specific situations keep coming up. And so we're working with healthcare providers, we're working with our decision tree from the MDH on what to do with those specific situations. We are not putting students in their infectious period back in the classroom. We're not varying from that, but we are following recommendations of our healthcare providers. And sometimes we have to make some decisions that are confusing for folks, but a healthcare provider has given us their recommendation, and that's what their expertise is. Confidentiality is also something we have to maintain with kids and with staff for that matter. So it can be challenging at times when you want to know who is it or where are they, right? What's going on or what's their situation? And, confidentiality in student data is really important. And so when we talk about a student's health status, there's some confidentiality we want to maintain there. So we appreciate everyone's patience, understanding with that. And of course, masking and transportation for the federal requirement is still required. On our website is the entire COVID plan that you can click on and get in there if you have any questions about that. So I just wanted to just reassure folks that we are still proceeding as we did this fall, with no adjustments have been made to this point. We have had some specific situations where a specific classroom had 3 cases in that classroom, so they masked up for a few weeks and they moved on. That was just fine. As far as the community goes, now vaccination is available for ages 5 and up. And so we're excited about that. We encourage everyone to consider that if that's what's right for you. Please go get vaccinated. If that's still continues to be the recommended best way to support this, but of course that's everyone's personal option, which we understand and respect. It's expected that tomorrow that boosters will now be eligible, or everyone will be eligible for boosters. It has been educators, frontline, people over 65. Now, as far as last I read, tomorrow it's pretty much everybody can sign up for their booster should they want to. Adults, yes, correct. Yep. For that, now as far as our community goes, since September 1, every day, if you just Google Wasika County COVID cases and the report comes up from the New York Times, we're averaging 7 to 16 new cases a day in our county. Remember, our county includes JWP schools, Richland area schools, Ardellville, Geneva, and us. And so 3 different school districts, 18,700 people. We're seeing how that rolls. It's a rolling 7-day average. And so you can kind of see on the note there where that graph looks. Right now, we're lower than we were start of the school year. And we're certainly, we've had a few more. The data showed a dip in late October in the county, but now it's creeping up a little bit. But that's just, otherwise it's been a pretty consistent trend line since mid-August. You can see what's happening in the county. As far as the school district goes, we are working hard. The students or staff are staying home when they're sick. If they're showing symptoms, we're asking them to stay home. Yes, that's causing a little bit of substitute issues from time to time. The staff's doing a really good job of managing that, supporting each other. The cases still continue to be primarily due to household contacts. We certainly cannot rule out in most cases that something in school didn't happen, of course. That's not realistic. But almost all of our cases start from someone else in the home getting sick, and the child gets sick. That's the data we have right now. A large majority of our cases. We're not seeing any clusters in a grade level building. As I mentioned, we had 1 classroom, and that was early in the school year, like mid-September, that had, I think, 3 cases within a 2-week period, and then they were masked for 2 weeks just based on the teacher communicating with parents, and they just decided that, and then it was done and moved forward with that. Right now, it's 0.74% of our students who are, that's as of today. Of course, we learn something new every day, but as of today, and it has consistently been less than 1% of our students since the school year started. So the positivity rate has not increased in our district and our students since the start of the school year. In fact, by pure numbers, we have less students who are positive today than we did September 7th. So that's positive. That's at least means we're managing it. 4 staff are currently out with positive tests, but that's the first time since start of the school year there's been more than 1 or 2 at a time. Less than 1 per week has been currently out with COVID. We're monitoring our cases. We're communicating daily. I have a weekly call with our public health that Deb Lobshaw is also on with me, communicating with principals, communicating with staff daily to make sure that everyone feels like they're getting supported. If we do need to respond, we will, and we have been when necessary, which has mostly been sending notification home, or student has to be out for a few weeks till their positive test and their symptoms subside. So right now we're managing what we have going on. So although we know what's happening in the state, we know what's happening region-wide, that's something to monitor and keep an eye on. What's happening here in our schools is that things are continuing to stay stable. So the mitigation strategies that we're doing right now, there does not seem to be any evidence that would cause us to change that at this time. And so I just wanted that to kind of, now as we end the first trimester, come close to it, it's a good time just to kind of reset that and just share some of this information with you all. But any questions about that before I move on to something else?
And this would hold true for our athletic programs and activities, and so nothing's really clustering anywhere.
There isn't at this time. You know, and we're watching that very, very carefully because we know that it could go relatively quickly if indeed it did, but right now it has not. So that's good.
And obviously, if things change, we'll bring it back to the board and we'll discuss that.
Correct.
Yep.
Absolutely. And you know, right now it's relevant because you know there is some things happening in different districts. I know there are some neighboring districts right now that are dealing with some pretty significant numbers, and so I think it's important just to not let it fall off our radar. But it's not something right now that has to be our the prompt to change. Okay. Very good. All right, second thing I'd like to talk about is the World's Best Workforce Report, and I'll ask Brooke McGuire, our Director of Teaching and Learning, to come up and join me for this part of the conversation. And we'll kind of just start seeing this report with you. So, Brooke, thanks for being here tonight. And the Advisory Accountability Committee, DAC, met and saw some of this information. Was it 2 weeks ago now, I think, by the time we had that meeting. And so this will be a repeat for some of you, but also for the entire board and the community to see how we're doing in terms of our academic report. So the World's Best Workforce Report, could you go to the next slide, Caitlin, is really based on Minnesota Statute 120B.11, that we need to set some goals for our district for how students are performing. And these are goals that are in the statute. And so we then have to customize and personalize these for ourselves. So it said all children are ready for school. Third graders can read at grade level. We're addressing racial and economic achievement gaps between students. The students are ready for a career in college, and that all students are graduating from high school. So that's what we work through when we set our goals. Brooke, do you want to speak to this one?
Sure. So in terms of school readiness, we're looking at kindergarten readiness and measuring that in a variety of different ways. So not just the academic side, but obviously socially, emotionally, how they interact with other students, and then the parent and teacher input as well. So the goal for that is that 90% of incoming kindergartners would be determined to be ready for school. And then, so this would have been our incoming fall this year, 88% of incoming kindergartners were determined to be ready. So we discussed there are a lot of different factors that contribute to that. We have kindergartners who are coming in with a variety of different preschool experiences, or sometimes that preschool experience is non-existent. So coming in from our preschool or other preschools in Waseca are not a preschool at all. And so taking all of those factors into consideration, we're looking at how ready they are for start school.
And given the year that we had last year in the pandemic, being close to our goal is a reason to celebrate some of the successes that we have. Reading at grade level by third grade, really the traditional measurement here is kind of a statewide measurement, being the MCA scores, which we could spend a long time talking about why we look at certain data versus other data. But the MCA score is one that we use, and our goal this year was 50% with score proficient of third graders on the reading MCA, and 38.5% scored proficient. You can see if you look at the third grade line, that's down somewhat from 2019. But remember, we had a gap year in between when they didn't take a test. So really what we're hearing from our statewide data and assessment folks is really comparing the 2019 is not necessarily the most productive thing to do because lots happened to kids in the last year and a half. And so it really becomes more of a baseline. Here's where you are in 2021. And now where do we set our goals going forward to continue to improve? You've heard, the board has heard me say it before, so has our staff, and so have our students and families. And it's okay to be where we are. Not okay to stay here. We've got to keep making some growth. And so when we get to later in the presentation, we'll talk about some of the things we're doing to address some of these student needs.
May I ask a question? Do we know, what was the reason, like from not 2019, but 2017 and 16, there is a drop? What is causing that our kids are slowly getting, behind? Or I don't know how you would, 2016 it was 70%.
Right, it has been a downward trend for a number of years. And there's really there's two factors we're investigating right now. And the first is that MCA is a different kind of test. And so it asks questions in a different way, uses different language. And we, as a district, have not put much emphasis in learning how to take that type of test in the last 5 to 7 years. And that's not about taking the test, it's about taking the time to learn. It's just worded differently in this test. The approach is different this year in this test. So that's one thing that our principals are working hard with their staff on, is how do we prepare kids to take this kind of test, which we haven't done before. But the other piece is truly, and Brooke is leading us with the principals, are we hitting all the standards that we need to hit in every grade level as effectively as we can? And the answer is yes, we're hitting them as effectively as we can, but how do we get better? How do we keep doing better? And so I think right now there's a little bit of, it could be a little bit of both, but we're working right now through that process with our teachers and our PLCs to figure out which the emphasis we can push more.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there used to be a lot more emphasis on spending most of your year getting ready for that MCA. And the district consciously decided a few years ago that no, we want to spend our year learning, not just getting ready for a single test. And we've introduced other types of standardized tests to measure learning throughout the year, correct? Yep. So
Very accurate. Sometimes, yes, in some districts, they could stop and just prep for the test a month or two prior to the test. So I think we discontinued that for good reason, but we could also stress and emphasize the importance of, it is one measure that we use to determine your proficiency.
Is there any other way how we can measure, is it really MCA test the best thing to set?
No, most of our
kids are.
No, like the NWEA is one, that's for like mostly fourth grade on up, and then partly uses Fastbridge. So yeah, so there's others that we use.
Yeah, but unfortunately, from a statewide perspective, what you're expected to use, you're expected to report this in also. This is part of it. So, but when we look at graduation rates, I want to talk a little bit to the correlation or lack thereof between MCA and graduation rates, so we can put in perspective what those scores look like. This is just a bar graph of what we looked at, the numbers you saw in the previous draft. Yeah, we are dipping lower than state average. There's some things we need to work through.
And on the right-hand side, it shows the percentage proficient in comparison to the state and how many students tested. So 2019, from 2019, you can see at the state level to 2021, about 11,000 less students took the MCA in comparison to in our district. We had almost 97% of our students took the test. So we definitely had almost all of our students take that test, which can reflect scores as well.
When nearly 1,000 students per grade level statewide don't take the test, that does impact the numbers a little bit. Not enough to, we're certainly not going to deflect off of our work, but we can be proud of the fact that most of our kids tested.
So, yep, Julie was mentioning some of the other assessments we use. So MCAs, we do get the results after those students have left that particular teacher. So these are some of the assessments that we use to really narrow into the specific gap areas of individual students. So Fastbridge is one that we use to do that at all of Hartley, but since the goal is focused on third grade, that's what's shown here. So on the left-hand side, just showing the first 3 bars would have been last year's third graders. So that's the same cohort or group of students. And then that 61% at the top is showing low or advanced. So minimal risk above benchmark is that 61%, and then 39% below. And that would be this year's third graders. So that is one assessment that we use, A reading. There's 2 that they use at that grade level. A reading is an adaptive test that's similar to NWA, so it adjusts based on how the students do. And then on the top, it says CDMR, and that's like a fluency check. So how many words does a student read correctly in a minute? So you can see with the green and blue bars, those are students who are above the 30th percentile, what we're shooting for. And then the red and orange are the numbers of students who are below that percentile. So they've taken the fall assessment. They're starting to get into some winter. They're testing a little bit more just to keep track of that. So testing more than typical. Typically we do 3 times a year. They're doing they'll shoot for 5 times probably by the end of the year just to continue to monitor that progress. And then this is a very broad level view. So like I said, the teachers go down into their individual class reports and can target it down to the strengths and areas to work on for each individual.
The next thing, the next part of the World Best Workforce Goals, achievement gaps. So our goals are students of color and students in different economic groups will achieve the same proficiency as our general student population, or I should say total student population. And students of two or more races did score about that same proficiency. And then the other students of color, EL, special education, pre-introduced, did score below the proficiency percentage of the overall population. So go to the next slide there, Caitlin, you can see. And I think what's important to note here is, and this is just by sake of numbers, the percentages probably aren't as telling as the number of students in those columns there. So when I think about our students of color specifically, let's just say, for example, our Hispanic or Latino students, 13% tells us one thing, but it also means that about 84 students in math didn't meet the criteria for the proficiency there. So we've got some work to do in those specific areas. So as we think about how we're hitting all students, creating personalized learning approaches, I think that's going to be a big thing we have to work through the next, like we're working on it right now. How do we serve all students? We know that each student is an individual, and students are not necessarily categorized by what they can do and what their demographic is. So I think the focus on personalized learning and helping to support students where they are, well, some of the resources we've added through some other opportunities we've had, help support students in that regard. So this is just for us to continue to look at and see how we're doing. Again, this is a different kind of year because last year was what it was, and so I have to caution us from becoming too obsessed with these numbers because our all student group wasn't particularly high either, and so I think we need to support all of our students.
But also, MC does not test all grades, correct?
Right.
So I always find that it's so interesting, because we're not testing our entire student body, we're just testing certain grades.
Right, it's 3rd through 8th and 10th, right?
For reading.
Yeah. Okay. So we also survey our graduating seniors to see how they're feeling as far as being ready for a career in college. Our goal is 80% are feeling ready based on their exit survey. And last year, even coming out of a year that we had a different kind of senior year for those students, 86% reported they were ready for whatever their transition was, and they felt good about where they're heading to next. So that's a positive result. Graduation rates is also something we measure. This is where I think sometimes the correlation is important to remember. Graduation rates is kind of what I consider to be the summary measurement of what we're doing overall in our school district. So if 50% of our 3rd graders score an arbitrary proficiency based on whatever number the state has decided, there's not really a consequence to that unless we don't do anything about it. If we respond to that and support those students where they are, to give them when they need what they need, so if they graduate on time and with options, then that score in 5th grade or 3rd grade is not as important. So whether or not we get a medal for the score in 3rd grade is not really as important as whether or not we respond to that data, we give the students what they need, and they graduate in time. So our goal was 90% of students were graduating within 4 years. The results was 74% within 4 years with a story behind it. And there's definitely some context behind this number. So at our senior high school, 89% of our students graduated within 4 years based on this measure. We had a relatively large amount of our senior class that were in the 4-year cohort that were ALC students last year, which sometimes students that are on an alternative path will take more than 4 years to complete their high school. And so when roughly 20% of your total N is a student that's particularly choosing an alternate way to get through high school, that does sway your overall percentage. And so 74% is not indicative of really our work at our senior high. That's 89% of our students, which we still, I think, need to get better. But that's, again, that's where we are considering the possibility. Now, we only graduated, I think, 13 or 14 students just in the spring, and there were several more graduated over the course of the school year last year at the ALC, so I'm curious to know what that number will look like here coming up this year. Our 6-year rates are much higher for the ALC because sometimes those students take a little bit longer. I have been in contact with MDE and the state of Minnesota, continuing to talk about how do we report that. Not because we want students particularly to feel isolated or any particular program doesn't do good work, but so we can tell the total context of our story. Because I think what will happen is in the newspaper, 74% gets reported and people wonder what's going on. Well, when you hear the entire story, because we're the regional ALC, so we support students from all over the region, who then do not get added into those home districts' graduation rates, they're added into ours, which is great. We want to serve them and do the great work. There's just a story behind it. So I think we have to make sure we're comfortable understanding what that full story is, and then as long as we are, then we move forward telling that to our community, our students.
You'll see that on the next couple of slides too, so that ALC of continuing students who might be on a 5 or 6-year plan. So this is just the senior high on the left-hand side showing the 4-year graduation rate, 89.1%, like Eric said, and then jumping up to 95.8% when we're looking at a 6-year graduation rate for that building. And then the next slide shows the ALC, same thing. On the left-hand side, showing that 11.1% graduated after 4 years, and then on the right-hand side, 45.5%. And again, more continuing. So we're working on several things already. We've had conversations about following up on that kindergarten readiness so that we're taking that action and providing them with interventions. We know the earlier we can intervene, the better, if possible. So making sure that students are receiving that support so that they are ready for kindergarten. Phonemic awareness and phonics curriculum have been added at Hartley in particular, and actually has also trickled up to WIS as well, just to ensure that any gaps students might have are filled. So moving forward, that they'll be able to demonstrate that reading proficiency a little bit better too. So phonemic awareness and phonics specific separate curriculums for each of those. We've started to do some more data dives and then breaking apart the data into those different student groups so that we can really examine those and see the particular needs of each student. And like Eric was explaining a little bit too, I think that really varies because we do have small populations of those different student groups. So it really is the personalized instruction that's really going to make a difference because each student's needs are going to be different, not necessarily just dependent upon which student group they belong to. Naviance is the college and career readiness program that they started at the junior high school. So we're working through that and training teachers and counselors and getting everybody on that. I think that was one of our strong areas, but that program also incorporates an SEL curriculum too. So we'll be addressing multiple needs of students when that's up and running. We've talked about personalized graduation plans a little bit just because it's not always realistic for students to graduate in 4 years. One conversation I was having was talking about an English learner who came into the district not speaking any English at all. So it's going to take them some time to not only learn English, but also get through the content. So just different unique situations like that where 4 years isn't always realistic for a student. And then of course addressing social and emotional needs, like I mentioned, Naviance too. WIS also started a program that incorporates some of that curriculum for those students, and so that's a really important component of it as well, so that we're addressing mental health needs, giving them the SEL skills that they need to really focus on the academic side. And so to continue on with some of those things and some additional next steps, we'll really dig into those different student groups to see if there are different ways that we can better meet their needs. Building teacher capacity to interpret and use data from the NWEA FastBridge. There's so much information there, so really helping teachers understand how they can use that to target their instruction and make adjustments. And then continue to use PLCs. PLCs have always been data-driven, but to really continue to use that time to make decisions based on what the data is telling us, and then continue moving forward with those mental health needs and building up SEL skills in the students.
So pending questions from the board, we'd be happy to answer any questions for you. This is the annual report that we present to our board at this time. And we submit this report to the Department of Education in December with note updated goals and updated plans. which we'll then discuss with the DAC committee moving forward. And then, as always, we're always happy to meet with you as an individual or answer more questions if you have more thoughts about this. This is pretty high level for a board meeting report. You know, the DAC committee got into some more detailed information with NWAs and things like that. And so this is where we are right now, but open up any questions. Otherwise, you'll be approving this as we get lower into our action items so that we can, Brooke and I can then submit this to the Department of Ed.
Do we get any comments back from the state once we submit this to them? Do they come back with anything for us? Other than they just accept the report?
If we were to, they do provide, there's a contingency that says they have the option to provide feedback. I've never seen it. I think as long as you're working towards your goals and you have a good plan, then they're comfortable with that. I think if we were to say, you know, we're really struggling, we have no plan, we don't know what we're doing, we'd probably hear from them. But because we're trying to create our own plan and move forward, I've never received that feedback.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Any final questions for Eric before we move on? Or any last words you have for us, Eric? Perfect. Then we'll move on to our financial and enrollment update from Elizabeth Beery.
Thank you for your time this evening. As usual, we have our enrollment reports and our expenditure, and this go around, we do have our revenue reports in the board agenda. So just wanted to touch briefly on enrollment, and I should ask real quick, can you hear me okay?
Mostly, yes.
Mostly? Okay, I'll again try to project, I apologize. In looking at enrollment, it's trending as we normally have trended throughout the year, so no surprises there. We continue to watch that, and as a reminder, you know, this is what helps drive our current year budget revision, and you know, we're already thinking to future years. What does that look like for us enrollment wise? We have passed a key date, even though a majority of our revenue is based on our average daily membership or our attendance. Our membership over the entire year. There are some key restricted funds that we had talked about at our last board workshop that really use some snapshot dates, October 1 being one of those. I am, I guess, encouraged by this information. So I looked at our October 1 from this year versus our October 1 from last year. And the count that they're looking at is our free and reduced count. And we had talked about prior that there's some great programs going on right now. Last year and this year, all of our students are considered free and reduced students in the eyes of food service. So everyone is getting a free meal regardless of financial status. So again, a great program, but unfortunately some other programs that are tied to that free and reduced count have suffered. So last year, our October 1 count showed that our population had a 29.3% free and reduced population. We knew that was underreported, again, just some of those consequences of not having to fill out the forms. And so I felt like this go around, between just conversations and a little bit more awareness of all of the different things that are attached to our free and reduced count, our report this year showed a 32.1% count for free and reduced. So I think we're still underreported, but you can see that I think we have made some gains from prior year. Again, just having those conversations and just reiterating how important those forms are for families to fill out. So I did feel that was promising. It's probably not exactly where we truly are as a district, but it is an improvement over prior years. So our financial implications will improve over the next couple of years based on that count. So I did want to point that out. Some other dates that we have coming up is a December 1 count. And again, that's more with our special ed. So we're really trying to make sure that our data is clean at all points and making sure we're accounting for all of our students to make sure we're maximizing and being as efficient as we can with all of the different resources that we're entrusted with. Speaking to the expenditures and revenues, again, the revenue report is in here. It wasn't included last time. This looks a little bit more clean after we've had a couple of months of audit under our belt. So if you're looking at the revenue report, we're comparing October of this year to October of last year. Some key things to point out with that. really do revolve around timing. So for example, you might see some of our local levies appear to be down in October of this year versus October of last year. A lot of that has to do with the timing of reports. So even though we may have received those funds, we don't have the reports to make sure we're recording it accurately. So if I ran this exact same thing, we'll say in a month from now, we'll have all of those recorded. So again, a lot of it, if I see a discrepancy, I look at it, I make sure it makes sense, or I look further into it to see why maybe there is a difference. So again, those funds will be accounted for. It's just, we want to make sure we get the accurate report to put it in the correct funds, whether it's Fund 1, Fund 4, or Fund 7. So we're just waiting on those at this point. Another one I wanted to point out was food service. Kind of going to pick on food service, but it's for good things this time. You can see the increase of 16% of budget this year versus 10% of budget last year. A lot of it has to do with participation. So last year, with us being in hybrid situation, participation was down. You can see that our participation has increased quite a bit. We're able to be claiming more of those meals. Our a la carte sales are in full swing. So we're going to be able to see that, and food service is doing a very nice job handling that transition from last year to this year. So those are the main things I wanted to point out with revenues. Expenditures, again, those big things that I really truly take a deep dive on are really the salaries and benefits, making sure we're trending accurately, because again, that is about 78 to 80% of our budget is really where those salaries and benefits lie. I think the only other thing I wanted to point out and just maybe bring to your attention, this is something that we brought up in the Finance Committee earlier last week. And we, in the Washington County News, there will be a posting this coming Wednesday. And so by state statute, we have to post what we think our ending fund balances will be for fiscal 21 in relation to also our current year budget, and how does that affect our projected ending fund balance for fiscal year 22. So we have to do that the earlier of November 30th, or when our audit is finally approved. So right now we'll be approving our audit in December. So that means that we do need to have that posted in the paper before November 30th. And for us, that falls on November 24th. So that will be in the paper. We did talk, like I said, we did talk about that at the Finance Committee. We do put a disclaimer in there. At this point, we do state that they're unaudited numbers and they are subject to change. The information that you're going to see may change slightly, but I cannot see that we're going to have any large swing based on what you'll see in the paper. We did have a meeting with our auditor on Monday just to try to tie up a few of the loose ends to make sure that we meet all of our appropriate deadlines. We do have to have our final audit submitted to the Department of Education by November 30th, and we will be tracking just fine and making sure that we meet that deadline. I think another positive at this point, and we'll go into more detail, probably more in the December timeframe, but just want to share with the board, last year we did project to spend into our fund balance, our unassigned fund balance, about $1.2 million. We did spend into our fund balance, but it was about $900,000. So we did make a gain, which is, again, positive story to share with everybody. Of course, I'm just picking on the unassigned fund balance at this point, but there are a lot of great stories, I think, surrounding the narrative behind the numbers. And as I said, moving more in the December timeframe, we'll get into more detail on ending budget, and then we'll also focus on the levy and what that might look like for future years.
Great.
With that, the train has ended my my presentation. That means I'm done, apparently.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions at all? Okay. Moving on then to our committee and board member reports. Scott, you want to start us off? You have a notebook and stuff?
Okay. My first one was the Finance Committee, and we did talk a lot about the budget and where things are trending for the year end for this last year. It does look promising because we're not spending as much into our budget or into our fund balance. Oh, and then we did talk a little bit about the LTFMs and how that voter approved stuff, how it all works out in the credits. That's mostly for that one. I don't have any other, that's the only one I have.
Thank you. Yeah.
We met for community health advisory meeting, and the new brochure is coming out December 13th for the winter and spring, activities, and everything is great. They are in full swing with all the programs for kids, for adults. We have like 16 volleyball teams for ladies, and basketball and kickball, and for kids they have after school basketball program we just finished, dance, floor hockey, and lifeguard training will be in December, and at school age doing well. They are just busy, and they are very happy that everything goes well. And then I was a part of the PGND, the advisory meetings, and it was more discussing the last professional day or work day. I think there are some things that then people need to figure it out how to really clarify what is what, but I think some groups they were very happy, some groups maybe not with whatever was proposed or given to them, but I think they are very excited and they will work hard for next one. I think next one is in September.
Yes, it's a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's a work day. And I was a part of negotiations, but I will let you guys.
Shoot, I was hoping you would take that. I'll let Charlie do it. Go ahead, Jake.
I went to policy committee and the district accountability DAAC committee meeting, which we talked about the world's best workforce report, which was very well covered, very thoroughly covered here tonight. The one thing I was going to add, I don't know if anybody else got a chance to do this today, but the School Boards Association in St. Peter put on a webinar today at 1 o'clock, and it was called Best Practices for Responding to Your Critics. And it was for school board members and superintendents. And I did have the time, so I watched that. A lot of good ideas, thoughts. I would encourage you to, if you can't sleep some night, you want to get on the MSBA website to watch that. No, I'm just kidding. But, it was worth my time, and I learned a few things. So,
So we can just send all of our critics to you.
Oh. All right.
Thank you.
I don't know about that.
Yeah. No, thank you. I saw that and it didn't work with my schedule today, but yeah. Thank you. Eliza, what's going on at the student council?
Student council, we have our first official full member, like all grades together. That meeting's on Monday, and then tomorrow we have a meeting for juniors and seniors. And that's pretty much it for student council right now because we haven't had that meeting. But I know like band just had their indoor, and FFA just got all their fruit sales in, and we just got our new officer jackets in today, which was pretty cool. Choir is working on our Christmas caroling music right now and our music for our Christmas concert. Football's officially done now, unfortunately, but I think we have our end of the year banquet on Tuesday, but I don't know officially yet. Basketball hasn't started yet for varsity, but I know the girls 8th grade is playing now. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Charlie.
Well, it's negotiations.
That has been the theme. Yeah.
I've been full bore into that. We've met with, I think, all the groups now, at least once and twice, some of them twice. So things seem to be going well in that area. Everybody's been quite, stay cooperative. I think it's going well. It's going well. Nothing's completed, but it's going well. We've been able to, communicate with the various groups. So that's there's nothing. I don't know. Nothing
Nothing to sign yet.
Nothing set in stone yet, so we're still working on it. And, but it's going well.
Mine have been covered. The only thing I would probably add on with the DAP one is just, it's really nice to see how the teachers are looking at how to use the tests and look at them as, they might be difficult tests, but how's the comprehension? You're looking at what else can you take from the data. So more purposeful.
And I think everything that we've served on committee-wise has been talked about, so I don't think I need to add any of that. But Lindsay, our other student rep, did send me an email. She wasn't able to be here tonight because she's in the play. So she sent me a whole list of stuff to share, and Eliza touched on some of this, but she says marching band finished their season last weekend with the indoor concert. There were so many people that came to support us, and we'd like to thank them. Thank you also to everyone who helped out and volunteered to take tickets, run concessions, make programs, and all the other big and small tasks that we take on to make the show amazing for us. And a special thank you to Mr. Lawrence and the rest of the marching staff for all of their hard work and support this season. So I heard really good things about the indoor concert. I'm sure some of us that you were able to go that again did not work with my weekend. Then she says the fall play is titled Trap. They have their first performance tonight at 7. So if you don't want to listen to the rest of our board meeting, you can head on over there and catch the performance. Tomorrow night also at 7, and then a matinee on Sunday at 2. Tickets are at 7. I hope to see lots of the community there to support our cast and crew. And so girls basketball and hockey started their seasons this week. Next week it's boys basketball, hockey, and wrestling team as well. And the students are excited to see our sports teams do well. And then she gives a shout out for the Blue Jay Blast, which is on Saturday. We hope to see everyone in the community come to support Waseca Public Schools. So that was Lindsay's report. So thank you, Lindsay. Moving on then to recognitions and positive board feedback. You want to start? I haven't gone your way first for a while.
I'd just like to say thank you to the community members that are helping with the facilities task force, taking time out of their busy schedule to best district.
Well, I visited the junior high, senior high school here a couple of weeks. I saw a lot of good stuff going on there, all the way from art projects that were there. There were kids in the science class, they were dissecting crayfish that particular day. There was 5 students working out in the hallway. They were doing advanced calculus, online calculus. Just a lot of, it was down in the building trades area. There were students, they were building end tables. They were busy. Everybody was busy. Industrial, was Mr. Koshel's class where they were doing something with building a building. And so it's just a lot of good stuff going on there. I visited with a lot of the teachers, and one of the takeaways that I wrote down here is getting the students back on track again after being on their own for a year and a half. It's been challenging, so I think that's something that community and parents especially have to be cognizant of. Getting your students, all your students have to get back on track. This is work here. So, but it was very rewarding to see what I saw there that day. I've been to, we know about football. The football team did well, they were a couple games short of being state champions, but they were on the way. I was to a choir concert that was excellent. I thought the choir students did really well. I was impressed with the younger students there. They did a nice job. Same thing with the band, indoor band concert. That was excellent. So it's good to see. It's good to see us getting back in the rhythm of school. So I have nothing but positive things to say about
it. Thank you.
Would just like to thank Heather Harms and Diane Ressler. I came in one afternoon here a few days ago, and they talked to me and told me about it. Took me on a tour of the 18 to 21-year-old program that we started this year for kids with special needs that want to continue on with their education beyond I guess we'd say the normal high school years. Also went down and took a tour of where the level program is on the very east end of this building. So thanks to Diane and Heather for spending a little time with me and telling me about all that and answering some of my questions. And then I was just going to bring up, I'm really surprised nobody has brought this up. This is American Education Week.
It is.
Isn't every,
So I just thought I would mention that.
thank you. Adita.
Well, last week was the Veterans Day celebration, and I was not able to go. I was watching online, but my husband went for both quiz and high school, and it was a beautiful program. And thank you for putting stuff together for all the veterans here in Waseca. And it was great. And I would like to say thank you for all the volunteers who already signed up for the Blue Jay Blast. And if you didn't, please, I'm pretty sure there are still open spots to help out on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, I went to the veterans program over at Hartley, and they did a parade through the school, and it was a neat way to, yeah, it was really cute. So yeah, I went to the high school the last couple of years. It was fun to go to Hartley, and yeah, they did a really nice job.
Mine was a Blue Jay Blast. I just want to tell everybody to make sure they go on Saturday for the pancake breakfast, live and silent auctions, and there's going to be a lot of good stuff going on, a lot of money raised for good causes. So.
I actually have 3 things I wanted to recognize. I was paging through the Waseca County News today, and I saw that we have a student, Nicola DeJager, who was named a commended student in the 2022 National Merit Scholarship Program. So this puts her in the top 50,000 students nationally who took the presets. So that's pretty impressive. And then I wanted to recognize the Waseca Area Foundation had their fall awards, and so they gave out over $100,000 in grants and awards to community organizations and other individuals and groups here in Waseca and then also over in Janesville. And then the Waseca Chamber has been kind of having a fun few months. They had their contest for a new business competition, and they crowned their winner. And then just last week, they recognized a number of current businesses with a variety of awards. And I just want to give a shout out to the Chamber for really celebrating Waseca and promoting businesses here. And that definitely helps promote the work, or in conjunction with the work that the school is doing. And so I think that it's fun to see what they're doing to bring excitement to our business community. So
Yeah. I think it's really cool because that actually brings in a new business to our community, which is really cool for the kids and adults alike.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I'm curious to see how that this whole gaming whatever world. I think that's a really creative idea to bring to the community, and yeah, something.
I think there's several more of the folks who took part of that will actually be starting some businesses, not just the winners. So there'll be some more.
Yeah.
Fruits of that labor here.
Awesome. That was a really neat idea to spur that kind of growth here. So. All right, but there's nothing else to discuss. We can move on then to our action items. We can discuss action items too, but nothing more to discuss along these topics. Moving on to our action items then. Can I get a motion for item A?
I'll make a motion to approve the acceptance of received gifts and donations.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Since this is officially a resolution, we'll do a roll call vote. So I'll call your name and then just say yes or no. Dave.
Yes.
Adita.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
I remember your name. Julie is a yes. Katie.
Yes.
And Charlie.
Yes.
I really should write down everyone's names. All right. Motion carries unanimous. I get a motion for item B.
Make a motion to approve account payable dental for the month of September in the amount of $12,032, $12,032.20.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion for item C?
I'll make a motion that we approve the world's best workforce report for 2020 and 2021.
First and a second. First and a second, any discussion?
Interesting report.
No further discussion, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion for item D?
I'll make a motion to approve the set rate for out-of-district non-public transportation.
Second.
First and a second. We need to, you don't have to say the whole thing there or anything, or do we? No, okay. All right, and this is just a standard, yeah.
Can I ask a question? What has changed from last year? The amount change or?
Yes, the amount does change from year to year. It's based on the aid that we get. And that does shift. So I recalculate it every single year based on the formula.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And the next one here is a resolution, so whoever wants to make the motion. Quick, there you go. Anyone? I can make the motion. Read the whole thing?
Yes. Yep.
All right, so this is a resolution of governing board supporting Form A application to Minnesota State High School League Foundation. Whereas the Minnesota State High School League Foundation was formed to provide support for Minnesota's high school youth to participate in athletics and fine arts. Whereas the governing board of ISD 0829 Waseca Public Schools recognizes the value of student participation in extracurricular activities. And whereas the MSHSL Foundation is offering grants and funding to assist schools in recognizing, promoting, and funding extracurricular participation by high school students in athletic and fine arts programs, therefore be it resolved that the governing board of ISD 0829 Waseca Public Schools supports the school's application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation for a Form A grant to offset student activity fees.
I'm going to speak to that for just a quick second.
Let me get my second.
Okay.
So first, and we'll make one of the second.
Second.
All right, first and second, please.
So the State High School League has a foundation similar to the Waseca Area Foundation that provides monies to offset student fees for student loan part of the activities. So Joe Hedegar is preparing the application to apply for that grant. And part of the grant application is that the board has approved this resolution. So that's what it's coming down to, is just we want to be able to obviously apply for this grant to offset costs for our students. And this is part of the process for Joe to put that package together.
This is something new for us here.
It's something that comes around every few years, from what I understand. We reset the application. I don't know if we've done it before or not, to be honest.
I don't recall.
Is this just for fees for athletics, or is it for
It would be any high school league activity.
high school?
And the purpose is to use it to create a fund for students who cannot afford any grants for athletics or activities, I guess. So
Second.
oh no, Scott already did.
Oh, we already
We're just doing discussion.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, I will call for a vote, and this is a roll call as well, since this was a resolution. Dave?
Yes.
Adita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
And Charlie?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion for item F?
I'll make a motion to a resolution to dissolve existing boys outline ski corporation.
Second.
First and a second. My only question is, what is the existing one, and then I know we're adding Nicollet.
Yeah, I can't get them all right, but it's Waterville, JVP, Lake Crystal, I believe. Now Nicollet has, I think, one skier that wants to be part of the group. So we have to officially dissolve the previous co-op and then begin.
Yep, I was just curious what all the school districts were that were part of
I think I got them all.
I think Lake Crystal was the one that I think that, yeah, that was one I remember. But. All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Then can I get a motion for item G?
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution to create new boys alpine heating corps.
Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, whatever. I forgot.
Thank you. Good thing we didn't have to say all of them.
Right.
Can I get a motion for item H?
Make a motion to approve the request to dispose of high school tables and chairs as appropriate.
Second.
Thank you. A first and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I was out to the high school yesterday too, like some of the rest of us have done. And the new tables in the commons, the whole top is a great big Blue Jay logo. It covers the whole table.
Yep.
So I thought that was pretty cool.
I've heard some kids are, no, well, the chairs are all attached now. They're like little stools. So students are adjusting to not being able to move their chairs around. I heard that's been interesting.
Get so many kids at a table, that's it.
Yeah.
And Justin Johnson, the assistant principal, was telling me that some of the kids were having a problem because there used to be, I don't know if I have this right, but there used to be like 9 chairs around the old tables, and now there are 8 chairs affixed to the new tables. So if you had a group of 9 that ate lunch together, now all of a sudden you're going to be a group of 8.
No, I understand the student concern, but I'm sure the custodians really appreciate this change. So,
Yeah, they're really nice.
any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. And then can I get a motion for item I?
I'll make a motion that we approve, review board policies, which are 427, 430, 457, form for the 457, 499, and a social media guidelines for staff.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Great, that brings us to the end of our action items. Upcoming items and reminders. Obviously this Saturday is the Blue Jay Blast. We already kind of mentioned that a few times. Our next work session is Thursday, December 2nd. And then our next regular meeting is Thursday, December 16th, but make note that that meeting will not start until 6:00 p.m. So it's a different start time because this is our annual Truth and Taxation meeting, and we're not allowed to start before 6:00 p.m. So you can come at 5:30, but we're not starting until 6. So, and then I just want to also give a reminder to the board. We got an email yesterday from HumanX that the extra survey that they sent out, as of yesterday, I think 4 of us had taken it. So if you haven't taken that yet, check your email and you should see a link for that. Otherwise, or ask Eric and he can make sure to get it for you. So we'd like to have all of us take that survey. So
That one's relatively fast. too,
yes, that
correct?
one's less than 5 minutes of your time. Yeah, that was quick. So I had to think about that too. I think I did that. Yeah.
14.
Anyway, any other reminders or things we need to make note of?
I think just on December 2nd, Savannah Zippel will have her ACE. So you're talking about her trip.
Awesome. Great.
I was looking forward to that. Then next week, we've got a abbreviated week, so a little bit of a break there. We're in the end of the first trimester already.
All right.
We'll leave that.
Can I get a motion then to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you all.
I just asked my son, did you apply for
Do a few,
next semester?
secretary
Just one second.
I thought